Hello and welcome to Shift Happens with myself, Matt Archer-Davis, the founder and managing director of The Bright Click.
And I'm Sanjeev Dodia, business growth coach, helping scale up businesses.
And it's good to have you with us again today. So what we're going to be talking about on today's podcast is why being busy is a leadership failure. So Sanjeev, from my own perspective, we might as well jump straight in here. We all know, don't we, as business owners, when we're having a busy day or a busy day, if that kind of makes sense. And what I'm talking about in terms of busy is, let's talk about the fact that sometimes busy can be an excuse for, kind of avoiding the important stuff. Sometimes busy can be a badge of honor, and sometimes leaders don't question even kind of why they're busy. So what's your initial kind of reaction to what I've just said there, Sanjeev?
Yeah, you say badge of honor, it almost becomes a bit of an identity for business owners. When you ask them how you are, I'm busy. And they are, because they fall into the owner's trap of being so in the thick of their businesses, all the operational day-to-day and the firefighting and reactive and so on. That is indeed their identity. But it's not necessarily a sign of the business is working. In fact, I'd argue the opposite, Matt.
Can often be the opposite, right? It's that kind of thing when you hear a business owner say, like, I'm flat out. I always think that as a kind of negative thing, in terms of the fact that they're probably then doing too much or doing too many of the things that don't move the needle or that don't kind of drive you forward. So we've talked at length, and maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of start here. So you talk often, Sanjeev, at what are the £1,000 an hour tasks, and what are the £10 an hour tasks. And often we can get sucked into those £10 an hour tasks, right? And then that's obviously going to make you busier, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Actually, being busy is costing you a lot of money, because if you think about a lot of the tasks that you do that are below your pay grade, don't require your level of knowledge, skills, experience, and so on, but you keep doing them because you're too busy to systemize the process, to hire the right person, to train them, to manage them, to develop them, to give them more ownership of not the tasks, but the process, the outcomes. So you keep doing them. And while you're doing that, you're not doing the high value, high skill work in your business. For example, the job of a managing director to get the strategy right, to get the go-to-market guide, to plan, to communicate the plan, to break that down, to put in place the measurement systems, the management systems that allow you to delegate that work effectively. It's costing a lot, If you do the maths, and you look at what are you actually busy doing in your week, and you identify that, look, 20 of those 60 hours are relatively low value, low skill jobs, administrative jobs, or routine work that can easily be done by, for example, an EA or PA, or admin assistant, or somebody who's kind of operationally better at doing the thing that you're doing, the bookkeeping, for example, routine bookkeeping in business. All of those tasks, if you add those 20 out of 60 hours and say, okay, if I didn't do them and I delegated those, what would I do with that time instead? If you repurpose that time, the maths tells you, you save a lot of money, because you're probably costing the business £100 an hour versus £15 an hour. And secondly, you start, moving the dial on the high value stuff that's really going to move the business forward.
Well, one of the things that we love about chatting on this podcast, Andrew, is the idea of sort of talking about the theory behind these things, and also then trying to convert that into the reality. And I've had a kind of reality of that over the last few months, in that I think towards the end of last year, for example, I got quite bogged down in lots of admin, a few kind of issues with CRM, and some technical issues and laptop issues, and also traveling a lot and that kind of thing, right? And what I realized was, I had found myself at times working on tasks without even kind of realizing, or getting dragged into client issues or team issues that maybe I didn't need to be involved in, and had to recognize at some point that those things needed to change. Because what I kind of figured out, but at the start of this year, was that my sales pipeline wasn't looking as good as it had been previously. And the reason for that is because my head had been turned. I was looking at other things, taking my mind off the fact that I am predominantly the sales manager, the business development manager, the person who's responsible for growth within my business. Now, helping out with one thing here and there, fine, probably isn't going to make much difference. But when you start adding those things up, day starts filling up with stuff that isn't moving the needle. Yeah, you're busy, but that's not a good thing. It really isn't a good thing. You'd rather have much less time being busy and more time, to focus on the things that are important. Now, what I'm going to relate that to is that when I sat down at my desk this morning, I had inbox zero. I had nothing at all in my inbox because I've spent a lot of time across the last few weeks having recognized that, delegating more tasks, getting rid of some of the stuff off my desk that doesn't, that other people in the business can do, and to try and focus more on just the things that I can do. And I have spent the entire day today leading up to recording this solely working on new business initiatives, having good conversations, sending some WhatsApp, sending some emails, working on actual campaigns. Do you see, and these are the things that are going to help the business grow and move the needle, rather than those admin tasks that can make you feel like you're busy, but actually someone else probably could have done, and it's wasted a load of your time, as you say, below your pay grade.
That's exactly right. When people say my priority is, for example, this quarter to grow our revenues from X to Y, my next question is, show me how much time you spent on that priority in the last week, because it's only a priority if you've got real clarity of what the goal is and broken that down into actionable steps. And secondly, you've allocated the resource. Now, sometimes it'll be your time and focus. Sometimes it'll be other people's time and focus. But until we've prioritized, allocated the resources, committed the time, diarized it, actually done it, we're not moving it's just a wish. It's not a priority. Right. And that's where lots of business owners get stuck on. And then end of the quarter, they say, well, we didn't really achieve that. Well, no surprise there.
Yeah, it can often be the same in meetings as well, can't it? And Andrew, there's a phrase that I really love, which is basically, that meeting could have been an email. Kind of, I think it's a phrase that we can all relate to. And I think that, the idea that people fill up their diaries full of meetings, and then again, it can be that response, I've had a really busy day because I had 9 or 10 meetings, right? And you look at your diary and say, wow, that was a busy day. How many of those meetings were necessary? How many could have been an email or could have been a quick chat on the phone? Meetings will start with pleasantries and end with pleasantries. You can get those meetings down as well, can't you, if you really want to?
Yeah, absolutely right. It's with everything. There's efficiencies to be had with everything you do, with how you write emails using AI, condensing meetings, etc., etc. I think probably the thing is, how intentional is your choice of where you're spending your time? Mm. What's the outcome that you're looking for? How does that relate to your goals, your quarterly priorities? How is it moving the dial forward? We talk a lot about the business work, the strategic development of the business versus in the business, doing the jobs in the business. As we move through the journey of growing a business, we start by doing all the jobs in the business, all 7 hats: sales, marketing, finance, operations, HR director, the whole lot. But over time, we have to progressively relieve ourselves of one function at a time to get the business operating without us. So, of course, you're going to be doing operational stuff until you've got a full team that's managing all the functions. But it's separating doing the jobs in the business versus time, prioritized time, diarized time. That's important but not urgent, as Stephen Covey says. The important, not urgent, is allocating. And we talk a lot about default diary, which is about ring fencing that time, blocking it off, and putting yourself in an environment where you're not going to get distracted, disturbed, interrupted, and, as you say, doing highly focused work. So I think it's about that intentionality in everything that you do, which takes planning, takes discipline, takes focus. It takes a regular review of what did I achieve today? How's that moved me forward? What do I need to achieve tomorrow? Same thing on a weekly basis. This week, what have I done? What's gone well? what do I need to focus on? That stepping back gives you the perspective to then get, track.
Absolutely that. So I think what we're kind of coming up with here is that there's a real difference between being busy and being productive, right? Essentially, and it's easy to kind of confuse those things. The cost of being busy as well, like bottlenecks can very quickly form around a leader. I think, like when I know sometimes with my team I've been the blocker for certain things, and it's because I've been focused on the wrong things at the wrong times or whatever. I can absolutely relate to that. Also, I think you can, if you're not careful, you can kind of normalize the idea of burnout, in the idea that, well, I'm flat out at the end of the day and, it feels like I got nothing done. You've heard so many business owners, leaders say that, feels like I've been flat out all day, but I haven't got anywhere. I haven't done anything, or it feels like I haven't done anything. And that's a dangerous place to be, isn't it? If, if you have got to the end of your day.
Yeah. Cause, or they're actually so stacked that they can't start their real work in the evening when their energy's low and their motivation's low. And they're almost feeling resentful of what they're having to do with their business. Everybody goes home, all the pressure's on you, all the monkeys are stacked on your back. And then you're trying to do your strategic work. So, to quote a book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, talks about actually reversing that and diarising your most important work that only you can do before you attend to everything else. Eat those frogs for breakfast, those big, ugly, slimy things. Because exactly as you said, it's costing you. You're the hub, all the spokes come off you. You become a bottleneck. Your team can't move forward because there's decisions to be made, and you haven't trained them to take initiative, own those decisions, take responsibility. Yes, they'll make mistakes, but if you have a culture of we don't fail, we learn, and that then establishes confidence and on their part and trust on your part to delegate more. There's a phrase I love. Brad Sugars talks about this. Systems run your business. Your team run your systems. You lead your team.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great mantra, because I think that is what ultimately leading a business is all about, is identifying the right team members on the right seats, helping them put in place the right systems, getting them to take ownership of operating those systems to fulfill your promise to the marketplace. And you then always looking for what next? How do we improve this? Where are the gaps? Where are the disconnects? Where are the problems? Look at the problems, but don't jump in with your super pants to solve those problems. Symptomatically, look at actually what's causing them. And usually it's because the structure isn't right, or somebody's not owning it, or the process, or they're not trained to do it properly. It's not properly checklisted. There's a system or ownership or structure or clarity answer to most of those, which don't require to be busy, but require to do the thinking, ask the questions, take stock, reflect, take perspective, plan. Makes sense?
That makes total sense. Makes absolute sense. Just going back to something you said there, and I know we've talked about this a lot in our coaching sessions. It's the idea of doing the things that only you can do. I think that was a big light bulb moment for me. Like in terms of clarity and kind of thinking, right, am I doing only the things that only I can do? If I'm doing something that someone else in the business could potentially do, then really I need to be delegating that and passing that on to someone. Is that a fair way to look at it? Essentially.
Yeah, 100%. I work with a couple of clients that were in a kind of accelerated scale-up journey. So we looked at this quite intensively together. So get them to do a time audit to see exactly where the time's going, with a target to how much time they're going to be spending on the business, on the strategic work versus in the business. So at the start of that journey, they were 80, 90% in the thick of it. Driving the sales, driving operations, and so on and so forth. By the end of it, there was in the middle, and the way we kind of carved it out is, all right, if you look at the tasks, high, low value tasks, high, medium, low skills tasks, how much of your week is going into which of those? It started off 80-20 kind of operational versus strategic, but then what we did was step through it quarter by quarter to look at how do we evolve that. So go from 80-20 to 60-40. So that's three days a week operational, 2 days a week strategic, and then moving to, and there's a direct correlation between that shift and how the business accelerated.
Mm.
And I've seen it again and again across a range of businesses. So whilst you might think being busy is a really good metric of how impactful you are with your business, I actually think it's the inverse.
I agree.
And we should have a metric around that for all CEOs and MDs, and track the relationship between their business and the growth profitability of their business.
Makes total sense. So in terms of wrapping up then, basically effective leaders, they protect their thinking time, right? They protect that time around them. They design their diary intentionally, as we talked about the default diary, like, they put that time in place. They block that time out. They decide fewer things, I guess is another good way of looking at it, but they decide those fewer things better, right? So you work on fewer things, but you do them in a better way, I think is a good way of looking at it. So one little kind of quote as well that I read, and I don't know who came up with this. Maybe I can find out afterwards. But the idea that if someone looked at your diary, would they see leadership or would they just see a list of tasks and activity?
That's right.
That's quite an interesting angle, right? Quite an interesting way of looking at it. So just wrapping up, Sanjay, if we try and finish, you've mentioned Eat That Frog as an example. I guess the 1 Minute Manager kind of comes into it a little bit as well. But, any other books that you might recommend anybody watching or listening to this that could help them in terms of the topic that we're discussing today?
Yeah, anything that talks about working in flow, deep work by Cal Newport, anything like that. What is it? The 4-hour work week. Any of those, the concepts are the same. And the concept, Matt, for me, are all about leverage. What the work you do, how can you make it such that has maximum leverage? For example, systemizing something and training somebody in your team to take ownership of it. Okay, it might take 1 or 2 weeks, but guess what? You only do that work once, and then who does it forever?
Exactly.
Not you, right?
Correct.
So those books are all about leverage, and there's a ton of resources around that. We've already mentioned a few. A really good test, maybe to part with, is ask yourself, or actually test this out. If you stepped out for 2 weeks in the business, what processes will break? Will the invoicing get done? Will the sales pipeline flow continue? Will the onboarding of new customers, whatever those processes are, just try it out and see what gets broken, because that's a really good clue on where you should be addressing that challenge with a system or process or person or training and so on, in order that you get less busy and the business can function without you there all the time.
Well, that's a great shout. That's brilliant, Sanjeev. And we'll wrap up on that note. So thank you as always for your time. Thank you everybody who's watched or listened to this podcast today. Please do give us your feedback. You can find us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear what you thought of today's podcast. Thanks, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thank you, Sanjeev.